It was an ordinary day in New York City, the streets alive with the usual symphony of honking horns, hurried footsteps, and a rhythmic hum of conversation. Yellow taxis weaved through the crowded avenues, their drivers impatiently tapping their fingers on the steering wheels as they waited for the light to change. Pedestrians in business suits clutched their coffee cups, striding purposefully toward their offices, while tourists stopped to take in the towering skyline, their cameras clicking away. The scent of roasted nuts from a nearby street vendor mixed with the sharp aroma of exhaust fumes, a blend that was unmistakably New York. Amidst the relentless motion, a solitary figure stood at the corner of 42nd Street and 8th Avenue, just outside the entrance to Port Authority. His presence was easy to overlook, another face in the sea of countless strangers. He wore a faded army jacket, its edges frayed from years of wear, and a knit hat pulled low over his forehead. His boots, once sturdy and strong, were scuffed and peeling, barely holding together. In his rough, calloused hands, he clutched a piece of cardboard with shaky, uneven lettering. "I am a veteran. Please help." This man, John, was no stranger to the harsh realities of life on the streets. His face bore the lines of a life hard-lived. Years of military service had left him scarred, both physically and mentally. Yet, despite all he had endured, the weight of rejection and loneliness was perhaps the most crushing part of his daily existence. On this particular morning, as the early winter chill seeped into the city, John stood at his usual spot, hoping for a small act of kindness. But the hours passed, and the stream of people merely walked by, their eyes averting his. It wasn't uncommon for John to feel invisible in the vast sea of humanity. He had grown accustomed to it, but the sting never faded. As the cold air bit through his thin clothes, John huddled against the corner of a building, still clutching his sign. Just as his hope was beginning to wane, something unexpected happened. A black car pulled up to the curb, and from it, a well-dressed man stepped out, his face familiar, his gait purposeful. It was Donald Trump. The former president had been in New York on a routine visit, his day packed with meetings and media events. But for reasons unknown to him, as he walked down the street, he was drawn to the man standing with the sign. He had seen homelessness in the city many times before, but there was something about this man's tired eyes and quiet despair that stopped him in his tracks. Trump paused, his gaze settling on the man. He wasn't sure why, but he felt compelled to approach. "Excuse me, sir," Trump said. "I couldn't help but notice your sign. You're a veteran? Wait, you watching till this extent shows that you're enjoying this video. Click on the subscribe button, then you can continue." John looked up, startled. He had never imagined someone like Donald Trump, a billionaire and former president, would stop to talk to him, let alone acknowledge his existence. Yes, I am," John replied, his voice shaky. "I served in the army, but it's been hard. I'm just trying to survive." Trump studied him, his expression softening. He could sense the man's pain, the quiet desperation that came with losing everything: identity, family, and most painfully, hope. "I know what it's like to feel forgotten," Trump said, "but everyone deserves a second chance. And you don't have to face this alone." John's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" Without hesitation, Trump pulled out his phone and made a call. "Give me a car," he instructed, "and a warm meal. This man's going to need it." A few moments later, a black SUV arrived, and the door opened. Trump gestured for John to get in. At first, John hesitated, unsure, but Trump's presence was reassuring, and after a moment, he stepped forward and climbed into the car. The ride was silent, the weight of the moment hanging between them. Trump, known for his powerful words and larger-than-life persona, found himself at a loss for words. John, on the other hand, stared out of the window, his mind racing. He had never expected anything like this. He had never expected anyone to care. They arrived at a nearby restaurant, one of Trump's favorites. The staff greeted them with respect, and Trump led John inside. He made sure to order a warm, filling meal, something that might ease the hunger John had felt for days. As they sat down, Trump looked at John with a mix of concern and empathy. "You don't deserve to be out there," he said. "There's no reason someone who served our country should be living like this. We got to do better for people like you." John felt a lump in his throat. He could hardly believe what was happening. The food was delicious, and for the first time in what felt like forever, he didn't have to worry about where his next meal would come from. "Thank you," John said, his voice thick with emotion. "You don't know how much this means to me." Trump smiled. "Everyone deserves a little kindness, John. No one should have to suffer alone." The next few weeks brought more changes than John had ever imagined. Trump, keeping his word, arranged for John to stay in a comfortable apartment until he could get back on his feet. A therapist helped him process his trauma, and through various connections, Trump ensured that John received the medical care he needed. But the most powerful gift was the opportunity for John to rediscover his sense of purpose. With Trump's assistance, John found a job working with veterans, helping those who were in the same position he had once been. It wasn't just about money. It was about restoring his dignity, his pride, and his sense of self-worth. As John stood in front of the mirror one morning, looking at the man who had once felt invisible, he couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. His life had been forever changed by one act of kindness, by a man who saw beyond the veteran sign and into the soul of a human being in need. Donald Trump's gesture didn't change the world, but for John, it changed everything. It gave him back his life, his hope, and his future. And in that small, powerful way, one man's compassion became the turning point for another. A reminder that even in a world often filled with indifference, a single act of kindness can spark a transformation that ripples across time. A year passed. John had stabilized. His job with the Veterans Organization brought him fulfillment, and the relationships he had built with other men and women who understood his struggles gave him a sense of community he had never known. One cold evening, as he sat at his desk, a letter arrived. It was from the Trump Organization. The letter offered John the opportunity to take on an even larger role, one that involved more outreach to homeless veterans across the country. It was a dream come true, a chance to impact the lives of those who, like him, had once been forgotten. John smiled as he read the letter. He had never expected his life to come full circle like this. And while he knew he would always carry the scars of his past, he also knew that with the support of one single act of kindness, he had been given the chance to change his life. The streets of New York were still as busy as ever, but for John, they now held a new meaning. He had been seen, he had been helped, and most importantly, he had been given the chance to live again. His story wasn't just about survival, it was about transformation. A single act of compassion had not only saved him, but it had given him the tools to rebuild, to rediscover his purpose, and to help others in the process. And in a city that never slept, John had found the one thing he had been searching for all along: hope. If you know you love Trump and you support that no veteran should be homeless or hungry, do well to click the subscribe button and write "God bless America" in the comment section.